Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women in Motion. I'm your host, Leanne, and today I have the extreme privilege of having my aunt, Auntie Samdaye Bachan-Johnson, with us. I can't say more great things than what I've learned and understand about her. I'm so glad she's part of our family, and I'm going to go ahead and hand her the mic to share more about her cause and her life experience. But thank you so much for being here, Auntie Samdaye. It's an honor to have you.
It's my pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for asking and me to share my story. It's always a privilege and an honor to share my story. As you know, that my husband passed, actually June 18th will be 5 years from Lewy Body Dementia. And it's a very specific dementia. It's the second dementia after Alzheimer's. So most people, when they hear about Lewy body dementia, really don't know what it is. I didn't know certainly 8 years ago. But if you happen to mention Robin Williams,
yes,
most people go, I get it. So Lewy body dementia really is a progressive illness. It's Lewy body dementia. The Lewy body is actually the brain cells that regulates your gait, your gait. It also regulates your mental capacity. And because of this, Lewy body dementia patients, specifically my husband, I can speak about that, suffer tremendously with hallucinations. So my story began really 3 years prior to him passing, because I saw some subtle changes with Larry, thrashing around at night, sleeping, acting out his dreams is a very common symptom. If you know someone, or you happen to be sharing a bed with someone like I was, and this person is acting out their dreams or thrashing around, then of course, that's one of the very early signs of Lewy body dementia, right? So my story began a few years prior to this when he was actually choking me.
Yikes.
And I was afraid actually that this is getting worse. Every month it was getting worse. And we ended up going to Cleveland Clinic here in South Florida, where I'm from. And as it turns out, during the sleep study, he was suffering from REM disorder. But I didn't know anything about disorders or had any clue in the medical field what that was. And as time, I would say about 2 months later, we started to see a neurologist. And the neurologist sent us to see a neuropsychologist. And this is when we started to get the diagnosis of, after 40 hours of testing, may I add, what it was. But it did start it off with the sleep disorder. And it wasn't because I knew anything about Lewy dementia at the time. It was, I was afraid that he was gonna actually kill me while he was sleeping, and there was no diagnosis for him. And he would end up in prison, let's face it, right? So it started off with us just having to have some sort of medical record that there was something wrong, legitimately wrong with him. So that's how the story started. It was because of that.
I see, Auntie. I was going to ask, with regards to the, I guess, night terrors, or as you've previously mentioned in other interviews, and acting out at night, was it throughout the week, every evening, or how did that progress?
It was every night, actually, but it started to get worse as time went on, because he became more and more defensive, because he had a very severe hallucinations. There was always somebody in his mind living in the house or in the attic. And there were times he thought I was someone else, and he was always defending, as any husband would or dad, defending their home. So that started to get worse each day, each month. And it actually gotten to the point where he was even afraid to share the marital bed with me because he started to sleep on the floor because he was afraid that he was going to hurt me. But I eventually had it, as time went on, I had to move out of our bedroom because my doctor, my primary doctor, had recommended that there are times where he would think I'm one of the invaders in the home and he would try to hurt me. So I ended up going on the other side of the house and removing knives and anything sharp that he can hurt me. So those were some of the things that was actually happening in the home. There were times he refused to eat because he thought I was going to put poison in the food, or he wouldn't drink anything. So things in the home really escalated quite quickly in 3 years. Because from the time we got the diagnosis to the time of death was actually 3 years. And it was an actual horrible time to see him deteriorate in front of your eyes. Somebody that you love that, towards the end, didn't know who you were or anything like that. So I would suggest that if you know someone that is going through night terrors or started to see things or hear things, at least start the process of getting some imaging done, MRI, see what's happening in the brain. There's no cure. Let's be clear about that, okay? So let's not give people false hopes that they're already going to get better and take a pill and you're gonna be fine. No. What we have to do, and the awareness that I try to bring, is that understanding there's no cure, and how do we go from point A to point B, which is death. In the interim, how do we cope with the things that are going to happen? So I went from being a wife to a full-time caregiver, and I never really looked at it that way until the neurologist said it to me one day in his office. He said, you do everything, you change him, bathe him, take care of him, the doctor's appointments, you feed him. You're actually caregiving, you're a caregiver. But I do recall the first time a nurse came into the home to give him a shower. It was the turning point for me. That's when I realized it was somebody else in the house. And there was someone else now that is actually bathing him other than myself. So that was certainly a reality check for me, that now it's like you go from a wife to watching, a nurse bathing and changing. And that took a lot of adjustment for me to recognize and accept this is where we are now.
I could only imagine. It's like such a challenge. We think of a lot of times as a traditional maybe mother, or for me as a wife to be one day, what is like our role and our duties. And I can only half imagine really how that would be really tough to imagine psychologically, and even like on the psychosocial aspect, how to have to step back a little bit or be maybe second in command or third to in order for your loved one to get the care and like proper treatment towards their holistic care that they need. So I could only imagine how challenging that could be. Sorry you went through that.
And you know what? It's I think part of the awareness is that we're having this conversation. And if for me, that we had certain things in place and we had spoken about things, because when we got the diagnosis, I said we got the diagnosis, we knew what was going to happen, because of the internet and the web, we everything. And my husband was a very intelligent person, graduated law school, UF, in the early 70s, the first one in his family to go to college. And he was actually the deputy county attorney here in Broward, where I live, for 33 years. So that within itself kind of took pause for me, because you kind of start questioning, how can someone who have done everything right You stayed on the job for 33 years. You've been very supportive to the family and the community. And you see other people doing so many things that are detrimental to their own health. So even that, coming to terms with that, took a lot to say why him. But now, 5 years later, I can say, you know what, there was a purpose, and our lives are purpose driven. And there is a reason why things that had happened that we went through together, that I can now speak about it, so that if someone else is going through some things, they're not alone. And I felt I was alone for a long period of time because you didn't want to. We were a very private couple, and things are happening in the home. And it wasn't until it started to escalate where I couldn't really keep it together anymore that you started to let people know. But I had a very good support system. I had my church family that would always keep me in prayer when I called. My family and I were very close and still are. My children moved in and spent some time back and forth. And I also had a lot of nurses and doctors in my family. So if things had gone on and I wasn't quite understanding what the doctors are saying, I was able to call and get clarity. And I was blessed to have a very good support system. And I think it's imperative that when, even now there's nothing going on, that we build bridges, and we're doing burn bridges, right? And
Absolutely.
we formulate good relationships. So in times like these that I have gone through, there were people there ready to step in and help. And that, to me, that's very important.
Absolutely. It's like sometimes when you think of that saying, like when they say it takes a village, it's not maybe not only just to raise your kids, or I think just it goes really like lifespan and throughout different stages in our life. It does take a village to be there to have that support system.
And I was truly blessed. God, you know what? God had put everything and everyone in position. There wasn't anything that I needed and wanted that was not provided for me. And that made the things that was happening a lot easier for me. Not that it was great. There were ups and downs, of course, but it made things a lot easier when I was able to call and, at least have somebody other end listening, because no one I knew at the time had ever heard of it. I certainly didn't know what Lewy Body Dementia was. And so just kind of learning and understanding and, trying to tell even doctors, they had no clue. They weren't being on the computer looking it up just as I was. And I think the education and the awareness is critical as to exactly what specifically the symptoms are for Lewy Body Dementia.
I think the awareness is very key. And actually, so I had watched your episode. Bear with me, just have some notes on the side.
No, great.
For with Dear Diaries with Miss, let me see, am I saying her name right? Is it Miss Roserby?
Yes, Miss Roserby, yes.
So definitely, I think I as I watched, I was taking notes and things I wanted to perhaps ask or commend you on was how you, in being a caregiver, because both my parents are in healthcare field, myself and my brother is as well. He's a little more healthcare IT, but for myself in healthcare as my main career. And I think it took so much strength when you actually wrote the receptionist a note and you slid it to her during one of the appointments before your husband was seen, your late husband was seen. Wow, that's a really brilliant idea. I don't know that even myself as a someone who is, in healthcare and from time to time has stepped in for elders as caregivers would even think of or fathom. So kudos to you for that and for taking that initiative.
Sometimes we have to be creative, right? We have to,
yes.
When you love someone, we always have to start thinking outside the box. Like you want help, you don't want to embarrass him, you don't want to hurt their feelings. And how do you get to the doctor without having him know that I'm going to speak about him?
Exactly.
And I think we just said each situation will be different. You know, some people may not mind, but if you know that loved one, you know what they will or will not want you to do. And we have to continue to be respectful of them, whether they know it or not. We have an obligation to respect what they would want for them. And I always operated like that, whether he knew it or not. There's always have to be a sense of respect.
I'm sure he knew it deep in his spirit, Auntie. It's definitely speaks through your words, but definitely respect is very key in any relationship. So thank you for sharing that insight. I wanted to I also have another screen that I'm glancing at with our questions. So
No, you go ahead. We're having a conversation. You go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So when we besides being on Miss Roserby's Dear Diaries episode, also when we connected on our previous call, you mentioned you were on Dr. Levinson's podcast. So how was that experience? Feel free to share with our audience about Dr. Levinson's background, and also when you have a moment to share the link, I'll be able to include that in the episode, in the podcast episode, and on YouTube as well.
Well, that was an interesting experience because it was the first time I did a podcast, on the telephone. So that was interesting. But that platform with Dr. Glenn Livingston, if you've heard of it, Never Binge Again. He's the author of Never Binge Again and several books. Okay. And that platform allowed me to get my story to more professionals who were in a completely different market than my Facebook, of course, and friends and family. And that was a very good opportunity that he had given to me to share my story. It was 20 minutes compared to the Facebook Live, which was more in depth. But the podcast is for Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Okay.
Never Binge Again. And it will say Samdaye Johnson, Lewy Body Dementia Conversation. And that was about 2 years ago. And I can give you the exact date if that will help.
Sure, absolutely. So I look forward to listening to it myself, and I'm sure our audience will be very pleased to listen to that as well, and your wisdom and insight on there. So also in previous interviews, you mentioned that you are part of a scholarship, or you have a scholarship for pertaining to Lewy Body Dementia Awareness. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, I can't wait to tell you about that.
So, yay.
After Larry passed, it was a few months later, I knew that there were going to be a lot of people that has gone through the things I have gone through without any kind of resource. And I started this month, actually be 5 years, that I started a scholarship for high school where I lived in Broward, because I thought that high school is as perfect as senior, because they will have their parents, and some of them lives in multi-generational homes or neighbors. They're writing an essay, which is mandatory on Lewy Body Dementia. If they see signs and symptoms of people in their neighborhood or friend or relative, it's the awareness that will come around. So I started that here in Broward with 3 scholarships. And my children and I and my daughter-in-laws are very proactive. They go to the schools. I take my grandchildren with me. I have 9 grandchildren, but I take a few of them. And we do it as a family, the scholarships. So the scholarship really is for high school seniors. Okay. It is 3 in Broward. And I'm planning on going to, upper education, college or technical school, but it's just to bring awareness. This year, I also are giving out 3 scholarships in Palm Beach, which is the next county up. So I kind of moved up a little bit to Broward and Palm Beach. So now it's a total of 6 scholarships, right? I started the nonprofit in December of last year. So it's now a nonprofit if somebody will wish to donate or whatever the case is. I haven't had any donations, but however that's gonna work. But it's very interesting because I've seen now after 4 years, or the 5th year, students who had gotten scholarship him is now in the health field or doing something else. And it's always good to see when they come back, and thankful that they were able to at least buy a book or two or help with their tuition for school. So I think high school seniors is for me, for what I'm trying to do, is the perfect target audience for me. I also, I started a few months ago as well. There is I suppose he's a famous Bollywood singer here up in Palm Beach, Ashe Manuel. So I sponsored a couple of his videos.
Wow.
So at the end of the video, it would say sponsor. I'm trying to target a different sector of our community.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of people, particularly West Indians, let's be clear, right? West Indians in general, people of color, it's very difficult for them or want to discuss mental illness.
Absolutely. It's almost like there's a stigma. Mhm.
And I think it's important for me because the scholarships, the first one is really well, I graduated high school. It is high school, Dillard High School, and the two other churches. And I kind of starting to target really the inner city, because I think that's where the key would be, because to let people of color know it's okay to even talk about it, even to have a few minutes conversation, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So it has been evolving as time went on, particularly in the last couple of months. I have been getting more and more inquiries and people trying to get more information. So if someone needs some information, I'd be more than happy to share some of the links with them that I have been saving as I go.
That definitely would be greatly appreciated, Auntie. And kind of dovetailing with what you're saying about it's okay to have conversations about mental illness and things like that. One thing I try to take with me when I was going to acupuncture school, in my clinical counseling class, they say, if you stay in curiosity, you stay out of judgment. So for myself in my day-to-day living, even, I try to stay in curiosity about things and research and inquire to really understand and not just stamp something off with a judgment. So it's so crucial. I fully agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the goal really is to just bring awareness of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that people could pay attention and say, you know what, this doesn't seem right. And for me, for a period of time, I sort of rationalized that. Because, you know, when you start writing a check off for the wrong amount, or if, you know, you're being accused of taking stamps, or you kind of wonder about that, like stamps. But I think there comes a time where we just have to say there's something wrong, something is amiss, one is going on, and let's just get some help.
Absolutely. It's like that, taking that first step sometimes is difficult, but once you get that process started, I think it helps a lot. It helps open a lot more doors, and just seeking help in itself is a great way to get the process of help started for whether you're a caregiver or even helping a friend in need.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's definitely been a pleasure having you, Auntie. And just glancing at my last question, you mentioned sending some links. So in wrapping up, how can our audience connect with you if they wanted to, like different social media platforms?
Okay. Let's see. They can email me, which is usually I have the link. So it's Samdaye Bachan-Johnson at gmail.com. That's specifically for the Lewy Body emails that I have already set up. If they want, I can share the link with them at various things that I've been saving for this purpose. There is also the Facebook page, which is the same, Samdaye Bachan-Johnson. And I try to keep it easy, of course, and streamlined, and Instagram. And we all know TikTok is leaving. So Instagram is the same thing, but those are the three media really that they can get hold of me. If they have questions, specific questions, they can also message me on Facebook Messenger. I've gotten a lot of questions that way. Because you know, it's easier that way because it's I can check my phone And it
Mhm.
doesn't take long to respond to someone who needs help right away. And I try to do that immediately. So if
Okay.
someone needs help or they need a resource, I just, hey, you know what, this is what's going on. I know you went through this, what could I do? And I try to answer right away, within minutes or so, because I understand how critical it can be.
Absolutely. That's very kind of you, Auntie. I'm sure your past and perhaps future people that connect with you in contacts, they probably greatly appreciate it. So I definitely commend you for that.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your day to be on the Women in Motion podcast. I look forward to staying in touch.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good rest of the day. Bye for now.